The Willowbrook Asylum was supposed to be a place of healing, a refuge for the broken, the lost, the ones society had cast aside. But something went wrong behind those towering brick walls, something unspeakable. Between 1893 and 1954, exactly 847 patients were admitted to Willowbrook. Men, women, even children, all entrusted to the care of doctors who swore to treat them with modern medicine and compassion. But here's the horrifying truth. None of them ever left. Not a single discharge record exists. No death certificates, no graves, just silence. For decades, locals whispered about the asylum. They called it the house that eats souls. They swore they heard screams echoing from its barred windows long after it was abandoned. They told stories of figures, pale, emaciated, dressed in tattered hospital gowns, wandering the halls at midnight, their hollow eyes staring out from the darkness. And then there were the disappearances. Not just the patients, no, those were bad enough. But in the years after Willowbrook's closure, trespassers who dared to step inside vanished without a trace. Some were thrill seekers, urban explorers looking for a scare. Others were journalists, historians, even police officers following cold leads. They would enter through the crumbling front doors and never come back out. What happened inside Willowbrook? Why were the records burned the night before an official investigation could begin? And why, decades later, do those who get too close still report hearing whispers in empty rooms, feeling unseen hands brush against them in the dark, or worse, seeing faces pressed against the glass, watching, waiting, as if the asylum isn't done claiming victims? This is the story of a place where the line between medicine and madness blurred into something far more sinister. A place where doctors played God, where patients didn't just die, they were erased, and a place that even now refuses to let go of the souls trapped within its walls. So I ask you again, are you sure you want to know the truth? Because once you step inside Willowbrook's nightmare, there's no turning back. In the late 19th century, America's approach to mental illness was undergoing a radical shift. Gone were the days of chaining the mentally unwell in prison cells, or so they claimed. The new era promised moral treatment, fresh air, and structured routines to rehabilitate troubled minds. It was in this climate of supposed progress that Willowbrook Asylum was born. Founded in 1893, just outside the quiet town of Blackvale, Massachusetts, Willowbrook was initially hailed as a beacon of modern psychiatry. Its sprawling Gothic revival structure, with its high-arched windows and manicured grounds, was designed to inspire hope rather than dread. The state-funded institution boasted private patient rooms, sunlit common areas, and even a small library, luxuries unheard of in the overcrowded madhouses of the time. Dr. Elias Voss, a young but ambitious neurologist, was appointed as Willowbrook's first superintendent. Educated in Europe under some of the most prominent and controversial medical minds of the era, Voss arrived with bold ideas. He spoke of curative isolation, of using experimental therapies to reset the mentally ill. The townspeople welcomed him, the newspapers praised him. And for the first few years, Willowbrook seemed to fulfill its promise. But cracks began to show by the turn of the century. Former staff members later recounted disturbing changes in Voss's demeanor. Once a charismatic idealist, he became increasingly withdrawn, obsessed with what he called the purification of defective minds. His treatments grew more extreme, prolonged sensory deprivation, ice baths to shock patients into lucidity, and later, crude lobotomies performed in the asylum's basement operating theater. Funding, too, became an issue. As patient numbers swelled, state inspections grew infrequent. By 1910, Willowbrook was overcrowded, understaffed, and operating under a veil of secrecy. Visitors were discouraged, patient letters were censored, and when concerned families inquired about missing relatives, they were met with the same rehearsed response, transferred to another facility. Yet no transfer records existed. Rumors began to circulate, whispers of midnight burials in the woods behind the asylum, stories of patients who vanished overnight, their beds stripped and reassigned before dawn. A groundskeeper's diary from 1912, later uncovered by historians, contained a chilling passage. Dr. Voss says the weak must be culled for the good of the whole. Last night, they took 7. No one asks where. No one dares. By the 1920s, Willowbrook was no longer a sanctuary. It was a black hole. Families who could afford it sent their loved ones elsewhere. Those who couldn't, well, the asylum's intake logs told their own grim story. The undesirables piled up, immigrants who didn't speak English, unmarried mothers labeled hysterical, shell-shocked war veterans, and, most hauntingly, children deemed feeble-minded by the eugenics-obsessed medical establishment. Yet through it all, Willowbrook remained standing. Its dark reputation only seemed to fuel Voss's determination. In a 1931 letter to a colleague, he wrote, "The world is not yet ready for our work, but when the truth is revealed, they will see we are not monsters, we are pioneers." The truth, however, was far worse than anyone could have imagined, because behind Willowbrook's stately facade, something unspeakable was taking root, something that would not stay buried. And by the time the outside world finally took notice, it was already too late. The official records claim Sarah Mercer was admitted to Willowbrook Asylum on October 17, 1901, for acute female hysteria, a vague diagnosis, even by the standards of the time. The 22-year-old schoolteacher from Boston had suffered a nervous episode after the sudden death of her fiancé, hardly grounds for institutionalization. Yet her wealthy family, desperate to avoid scandal, paid handsomely to have her discreetly committed. Sarah was supposed to stay 6 months. She never walked out. Her case file, one of the few that survived the asylum's eventual purge, tells an unsettling story. For the first weeks, progress notes describe Sarah as cooperative and improving. Then abruptly, the tone shifts. On November 28, a nurse's scribbled observation reads, "Patient claims to hear singing in the walls, refuses meals, becoming agitated." By December, the entries grow more concerning. Subject exhibits violent resistance to hydrotherapy, speaks of the faces in the ceiling. The last note about Sarah Mercer, dated December 22, 1901, consists of just 5 words, transferred to isolation. No disturbances. But isolation wards had visitor logs, and Sarah Mercer's name never appeared in one. Her family received a letter in January 1902 stating Sarah had been moved to a specialist facility in New York. No such transfer request existed. When her father demanded answers, Superintendent Voss personally assured him his daughter was receiving the most advanced care available. A month later, the Mercers received a telegram. "Regret to inform you Sarah succumbed to pneumonia. Remains handled per institution policy. No body was ever returned. No death certificate filed." Sarah Mercer became Willowbrook's first ghost. But she wouldn't be the last. In 1903, groundskeeper Thomas Riggs reported finding a woman's nightgown, monogrammed SM, snagged on the barbed wire of the asylum's outer fence. When he brought it to Dr. Voss, he was fired on the spot. The gown vanished. By 1905, the pattern was clear. Every 4 to 6 weeks, another patient would disappear from the rolls. The excuses were always the same: transferred, died suddenly, escaped. Yet no escapes were ever reported to police. No families viewed bodies. And the asylum cemetery, where simple markers should have numbered in the hundreds, held fewer than 24 graves. A 1907 intake nurse's private diary discovered decades later in a Boston antique shop contained this damning passage: "They took the Welsh girl tonight." Number 47. Matron says we're to mark her discharged, but I saw the order sheet. No discharge, no burial, just the red 10th. God help me, I know what that means now. The red 10th had appeared in margins of patient charts, scrawled on dormitory assignment lists, even carved into the wood of certain cell doors, always followed by silence. By 1910, nearly 100 souls had vanished from Willowbrook without explanation, yet no one intervened, no one asked questions, because the terrible truth was this: Sarah Mercer wasn't patient zero. She was just the first one someone noticed was missing. Dr. Elias Voss did not act alone. Behind every vanished patient, every falsified record, every midnight burial in unmarked graves, stood a carefully selected cadre of loyalists, medical professionals who either shared his warped vision or were too terrified to oppose it. Together they transformed Willowbrook from a place of healing into a factory of suffering. Chief among them was head nurse Agnes Poole. A stern, square-jawed woman in her 52nds, Poole had worked in asylums since the Civil War. She spoke of patients as inmates, of treatment as discipline. Her leather-bound ledger, later recovered from the asylum ruins, contained chillingly matter-of-fact entries: December 3, 1909, male ward 4, bed 12. Subject 114th exhibited degenerate behavior, recommended for special procedure. Voss approved. The special procedure required no explanation amongst staff. Then there was Dr. Philip Graves, Willowbrook's chief surgeon. a hulking man with nicotine-stained fingers. Graves performed lobotomies with the cold precision of an assembly line worker. His surgical notes, when compared to patient records, revealed a horrifying discrepancy. He operated on nearly triple the number officially diagnosed as requiring the procedure. When questioned by junior staff, he'd smile and say, "We're not just treating illness, we're preventing it." The asylum's pharmacist, Leonard Shaw, played his own dark role. Supply manifests showed he ordered enough morphine each month to sedate an army, yet the medicine cabinets were always half empty. Former orderly James Callahan testified in a 1923 lawsuit, quickly dismissed, that Shaw maintained a separate stockroom where he compounded experimental drug cocktails, substances that left patients docile, confused, and, in some cases, dead within hours. But perhaps most disturbing was Reverend Jonathan Whitlock, Willowbrook's chaplain. He held Sunday services in the asylum chapel, preaching fire and brimstone to rows of heavily sedated patients. His private journals, discovered walled up in the chapel basement, contained passages that still haunt investigators. October 31, 1915. "Tonight we purified 3 souls. Dr. Voss says their weakness would have spread like rot. The Lord's work is difficult but necessary. These were not rogue employees acting in secret. They formed a well-oiled machine of cruelty, with Voss as its architect. Staff meetings resembled war councils, where patients were referred to by number rather than name, their fates decided with bureaucratic detachment. New hires who expressed discomfort were quickly dismissed, or in at least 2 documented cases found themselves admitted as patients. A 1918 letter from Nurse Poole to her sister, later used as evidence in an inquest, revealed the institution's true purpose. Dr. Voss believes we stand on the brink of a great cleansing. The defective must be removed from the human strain, not just isolated. He's shown me the charts. Our work here has reduced undesirable births in 3 counties by nearly 40%. The board may clutch their pearls, but history will vindicate us." The Board of Trustees, ostensibly Willowbrook's governing body, turned a blind eye for decades. Meeting minutes show they praised Voss's innovative methods and cost-saving measures. When state inspectors visited, a rare occurrence after 1910, they were shown only Ward A, the carefully maintained showcase wing where model patients were coached to recite scripted answers about their excellent care. Behind the scenes, Voss's inner circle operated with impunity. They developed a system of colored wristbands to classify patients. Blue, treatment-resistant, recommended for extreme measures. Red, strong physical specimens, selected for grave surgical experiments. Black, already marked for disappearance. The staff cafeteria became known as the sorting room, where nurses would casually discuss which patients would be going on a trip tonight, a euphemism that sent shivers through even the most hardened orderlies. By 1925, the system was perfected. Patients vanished like clockwork, their names erased from logs, their belongings burned in the basement incinerator. The asylum's laundry operated around the clock, stripping beds before the sheets could stain. Groundskeepers worked night shifts, their shovels biting into earth under the cover of darkness. And through it all, Dr. Voss maintained his reputation as a visionary. He published papers, gave lectures, even advised state health policy, all while his private ledger, now housed in the Blackvale Historical Society's restricted archives, tallied the true cost. As of January 1930, 612 purified. The work continues. The handwriting, forensic experts would later confirm, was unquestionably his. For years, the question haunted investigators: how could 847 people disappear without a single body being found? The asylum's official cemetery contained only 23 graves. The surrounding woods, though occasionally yielding bone fragments, showed no signs of mass burials. The answer, it turned out, lay beneath their feet. In 1954, as demolition crews prepared to tear down Willowbrook's main building, a workman's sledgehammer broke through a basement wall, revealing a gaping black passageway. The foreman, Joseph Petrovsky, later testified, "The air that came out, God, I'll never forget that smell, like rotten meat and chemicals, and the way it echoed, like the tunnel went on forever." What they discovered was an extensive underground network stretching nearly a quarter-mile beneath the asylum grounds. Brick-lined corridors branched off into chambers with drainage grates in the floors. Rusted gurneys sat abandoned in the passages, their leather restraints still stained dark brown. Most chilling of all were the markings on the walls, notches carved at regular intervals, later determined to be tally marks. Forensic teams would eventually map 3 primary tunnels. The red route ran from the surgical ward directly to the incinerator building. Burn patterns on the walls suggested frequent, intense fires. The black route terminated in a flooded chamber the locals called the lime pit, where dozens of skeletal remains were found suspended in a thick slurry of calcium oxide. The white route, the most disturbing, led to a series of small, cell-like rooms equipped with medical tables and what appeared to be primitive electrical equipment. A 1955 police report noted, each processing room contained a floor drain, overhead pulley system, and wall-mounted cabinets holding surgical tools. The largest chamber, room 12 billions, featured a concrete slab with iron rings at each corner and a central gutter. The tunnel solved another mystery, how staff moved patients without witnesses. Nurse Eleanor Pritchard's 1947 confession given on her deathbed described the process. After lights out, the orderlies would take the marked ones. Blue wristbands went down the east stairwell, straight to the tunnels. Some walked, doped to their eyeballs. Others were wheeled. You could hear the gurney wheels squeaking all through the walls at night. Even more horrifying was the evidence suggesting the tunnels weren't just for disposal. Diaries found in Dr. Graves's quarters referenced the midnight classes, anatomy lessons conducted on fresh specimens. Inventory lists showed surgical tools disappearing from the main operating theater, only to reappear weeks later, meticulously cleaned. The most damning discovery came in Tunnel Branch 7, where investigators found a rusted metal cart containing 47 glass specimen jars, all empty, a ledger labeled Harvest. Logs a small mountain of blue wristbands. Forensic anthropologist Dr. Samuel Reyes testified before a 1956 grand jury. The patterning of cut marks on recovered bones indicates systematic dissection. These weren't haphazard burials. This was an assembly line. Yet the full truth may never be known. 3 days after the tunnel's discovery, a gas leak explosion collapsed 60% of the network. The official explanation was laughable. Willowbrook hadn't had gas service since 1932. Today, the remaining tunnels are sealed under tons of concrete, but locals swear that during heavy rains, the storm drains near the old asylum grounds still spit out things, fragments of bone, shreds of cloth, and sometimes, when the water recedes, small numbered tags, each bearing the same 3 letters, WIA Willowbrook Inventory, active. For 34 years, Eleanor Pritchard kept Willowbrook's secrets. A head nurse at the asylum from 1918 to 1952, she had been one of Dr. Voss's most trusted lieutenants until the night she wasn't. On her deathbed in 1954, ravaged by lung cancer and what she called a sickness of the soul, Eleanor gave a statement to a local priest that would shatter the asylum's carefully constructed facade. The document, known as the Pritchard Confession, was buried in a diocesan archive for decades before being leaked to journalists in 1982. Its contents read like something from a nightmare. They started with the ones no one would miss, Eleanor began. The homeless, the orphans, the immigrants who couldn't speak English. Dr. Voss called them the silent surplus. She described a meticulous system of selection. Patients were graded on a scale from 1 to 5, their names replaced by numbers in private staff logs. The 5 seconds were always first, those deemed incurable, violent, or in Voss's words, genetically undesirable. We'd move them at night, Eleanor wrote. 2 orderlies, a nurse, and always, one of the doctors. They made us participate, said it was the only way to ensure our silence. Her account confirmed the tunnel's purpose, but added horrifying new details. Some patients weren't dead when taken below. The injections didn't always work fast enough. You'd hear them, struggling. The straps would creak. Once a young man, subject 422, got loose. They chased him through Tunnel Branch 3. When they brought him back, Dr. Graves was laughing, said it was good exercise. The confession took an even darker turn when Eleanor described the harvest days. Every 3rd Thursday, the trucks came, unmarked, black tarps over the beds. Graves would pick the strongest ones, the ones who could still walk with a little chemical encouragement. Said they were going to a sister facility. But I saw the shipping manifests. They went to private buyers, medical schools, research labs, even, here, the writing grew shaky, even to men who came at night wearing fine suits, carrying cash in leather bags. Eleanor claimed she tried to quit in 1937. The next morning, she awoke in Willowbrook's isolation ward, strapped to a bed, an IV dripping something cold into her veins. Voss stood over me, said, "You belong to Willowbrook now, Nurse Pritchard, in life and eventually in death." That's when I knew the patients weren't the only ones who'd never leave. She played the model employee after that, biding her time. In 1949, she began secretly copying records, hiding the papers behind a loose brick in her quarters. But before she could act, the pain started. The cough that brought up blood, the lesions no doctor could explain. The confession's final pages are the most disturbing. Written in a trembling hand as death crept closer, Eleanor described something that couldn't be explained by medical crimes alone. The tunnels are alive, not just rats, something else. The orderlies heard it first, scratching in the walls. Then the night nurses started seeing shapes moving in the dark down there. Not patients, not human. Last winter, we found Subject 588's body in Branch 2, or parts of it. The teeth marks weren't from any animal I know. She concluded with a warning. They think burning the records will hide the truth. But the walls remember, the ground remembers, and whatever's down there in the dark, it's still hungry. Eleanor Pritchard died 12 hours after signing the document. The priest who witnessed it committed suicide 6 months later, leaving behind a note that simply read, "I can't stop hearing the screams." When investigators finally stormed Willowbrook in 1954, they found Eleanor's hidden records and something else. A single blue wristband placed neatly on her pillow, the numbers 1918 to 1952 inked on the inside. The years of her service. A receipt for a debt paid in full. The state investigation into Willowbrook was supposed to begin on Monday, March 15, 1954. It never got the chance. At 2:17 a.m. on Sunday the 14th, Blackvale's volunteer fire department received frantic calls about an inferno at the asylum. By the time trucks arrived, the central administration wing, where all patient records were stored, was already collapsing into itself, flames licking at the barred windows like something alive. Fire Chief William Hargrove would later testify, it wasn't natural. That fire moved like it had a mind of its own. We'd knock it down in one area, and it'd flare up in another 3 places at once. The blaze took 14 hours to fully extinguish. When the smoke cleared, investigators found something deeply unsettling. The fire's origin points formed a perfect triangle around the records room, with traces of accelerant in each spot. This wasn't an accident, it was a surgical strike. Dr. Voss's body was discovered in his office, slumped over his desk. The coroner's report listed the cause of death as smoke inhalation, but the details raised questions. His wrists showed ligature marks. A half-empty bottle of bourbon sat nearby, though Voss was a known teetotaler. Most telling? The heavy safe behind his desk, the one that should have held the asylum's most sensitive documents, stood wide open and empty. The official death toll was listed as 9, Voss, 2 night nurses, and 6 patients who hadn't been transferred before the closure. But locals knew better. Blackvale's undertaker, Carl Metzger, kept private records that contradicted the story. They brought me 12 pine boxes that night, not 9, 12. And the ones marked patient remains, they didn't smell like smoke. They smelled like the tunnels. The state's hastily convened inquest ruled the fire likely electrical in nature. Despite the fire marshal's protestations, the case was closed in under 3 weeks. Reporters who dug deeper met with strange resistance. One from the Boston Globe had his notes stolen from his hotel room. Another found her car's brakes mysteriously failing on a country road. But the most chilling postscript came from the demolition crew tasked with raising Willowbrook's remains. Foreman Ray Dolan's work journal contained this entry dated April 2, 1954. Found a locked metal box in the rubble today. Inside were 847 patient files, each one stamped with a red 10th, told the boss. He made me put it back in the wreckage before they poured the foundation cap. Said some things belong under concrete. The fire achieved exactly what it was designed to do. Without records, without living witnesses willing to talk, Willowbrook's darkest secrets were buried under layers of bureaucracy and fresh cement. The state psychiatric board praised Voss posthumously as a pioneer in mental health treatment. The asylum's land was sold to a development company in 1955. By 1957, a shopping plaza stood where the screams once echoed. But in Blackvale, people remember. They whisper about the night the fire glowed an unnatural blue at its core, about the figures some claim to have seen walking calmly through the flames untouched, and about the single asylum record that somehow survived, a charred intake form for Subject 001 recovered a quarter mile from the blaze. The name had burned away. Only the diagnosis remained, written in Voss's unmistakable hand: the cure requires eradication. and below it, freshly inked after all these years, a single word in an unknown hand: soon. The Willowbrook Shopping Center stood for 43 years before the cracks began to show, not just in the pavement, but in the official story. In 1998, construction workers expanding the parking lot unearthed a rusted metal box containing 22 blue wristbands, each marked with a patient number. When local historian Marcus Drew brought them to authorities, he was told they were medical waste and confiscated. That night, Drew's home office burned to the ground. The fire marshal called it faulty wiring. Drew called it a warning. This pattern repeated for every investigator who dared dig deeper. Paranormal researcher Lisa Nguyen published the first comprehensive Willowbrook documentary in 2008. Her footage showed unexplainable phenomena, shadow figures darting through abandoned tunnels still accessible via the storm drains, EVP recordings, whispering "help us" in multiple voices, thermal scans revealing cold spots in perfect human shapes. 3 weeks after uploading the video, which garnered over 2 million views before being mysteriously deleted, Nguyen was found dead in her apartment. The coroner ruled it a suicide. Her hard drives were never recovered. Then came the urban explorers. In 2015, a YouTube duo calling themselves the Gravediggers livestreamed their illegal entry into the sealed tunnels beneath the shopping center. The footage remains some of the most chilling ever captured. 2:17 a.m., the camera glitches as they pry open a maintenance hatch. A faint singing voice echoes from the darkness, an old Gaelic lullaby later identified as one sung by immigrant patients. 2:34 a.m., their infrared camera picks up a figure crouching 30 feet down the tunnel. When they call out, it stands to an impossible height, nearly 7 feet tall, before vanishing. 3:01 a.m., the audio picks up clear footsteps approaching. The last words heard before the feed cuts out: "Oh God, they're all down here." The explorers were found wandering Route 17 at dawn, shoeless, their clothing torn. Both were hospitalized with severe psychosis. One now resides in a psychiatric facility. The other refuses to speak about that night, except to whisper the blue lights whenever Willowbrook is mentioned. The most damning evidence came in 2019, when construction crews installing fiber optic cables beneath the shopping center hit a previously undiscovered chamber. Security camera footage from the site shows workers fleeing in terror after uncovering a surgical table with intact leather restraints, wall markings matching patient numbers from Nurse Pritchard's records. 47 glass specimen jars, now filled with an unidentified liquid. The site was immediately sealed by men in unmarked vehicles. An official statement cited colonial-era septic tanks as the find, but leaked soil analysis reports told a different story. The ground was saturated with quicklime, a substance used to accelerate decomposition. Modern technology has only deepened the mystery. Ground-penetrating radar scans conducted in 2022 revealed an extensive network of tunnels beyond the known sealed portions. Thermal drones detected heat signatures moving through these passages at night, despite no known entrances existing. Perhaps most unsettling are the digital anomalies. Visitors to the shopping center report phones malfunctioning in specific spots, photos deleting themselves, voice memos picking up whispers, maps displaying non-existent hallways labeled Ward 9. A Reddit thread analyzing these phenomena was abruptly locked by moderators in 2023 after users began receiving DMs containing a single image, a scanned patient admission form with their own names handwritten in the subject field. The current property owner, Blackvale Development LLC, refuses all interview requests. Corporate records list no human principals, just a series of shell companies tracing back to a Zurich holding firm. Security patrols the parking lot nightly, though no thefts have ever been reported. As for the truth, it remains buried, but not silent. Every March 14th, the anniversary of the fire, residents report hearing asylum bells ringing beneath the earth. The shopping center's surveillance cameras glitch at exactly 2:17 a.m., always capturing the same blurred figure walking toward the sealed maintenance hatch. And sometimes, when the parking lot empties at closing time, the security guards swear they can still hear it, the squeak of gurney wheels. Getting closer, always closer. For decades, the victims of Willowbrook were just numbers in a ledger, entries marked with red X's, their lives reduced to tally marks on a wall. But in 2016, a group of historians, genealogists, and volunteers launched the 847 Names Project. a painstaking effort to reclaim the identities stolen by Dr. Voss and his machine of erasure. The project began with a single photograph. Discovered in a Boston antique shop, the cracked tintype showed a young woman standing outside Willowbrook's gates, her face gaunt but alert. On the back, a handwritten note. Maggie O'Shea, admitted June 1912, age 19, gone by Christmas. Researchers traced Maggie to an Irish immigrant family in South Boston. Her great-niece, now 82, provided the first full biography. Aunt Maggie wasn't crazy, she had epilepsy. When she had a seizure at her factory job, they shipped her to Willowbrook. My grandmother visited once, said Maggie begged her to take her home, but the doctors claimed she was dangerously unstable. The last letter we got said, "They're putting something in the tea." Then silence. Maggie became patient 291st. Her story unlocked the floodgates. Using Nurse Pritchard's fragmentary records, census data, and newspaper archives, the team began piecing together lives from the fragments Voss tried to. Burn, subject 114th. Elijah Carter, a Black World War I veteran admitted for shell shock after protesting a lynching in Alabama. Transferred to Willowbrook under mysterious circumstances in 1921. Marked for special procedure 3 weeks later. Subject 377th. The Kozlov siblings, Anna 12 and Pyotr 9, committed when their Russian immigrant parents died in a factory fire. Listed as feeble-minded despite school records showing both were honor students. Disappeared during a 1932 measles outbreak. Subject 599th. Dr. Lillian Wei, a Chinese-American physician institutionalized in 1944 after reporting surgical malpractice at a Boston hospital. Her file contained a single note, delusional claims of medical training, recommend permanent sedation. The project's most heartbreaking discovery came in 2019 when cross-referencing birth certificates with asylum intake logs revealed at least 63 children under age 10 had been admitted, mostly orphans or bastard children of unwed mothers. The youngest, a 3-year-old listed only as baby boy Franklin, spent one night at Willowbrook before being marked transferred to Angel's Crest Orphanage. No such orphanage existed. Some stories defied explanation. Patient 001 Foot's records were partially recovered from a fireproof safe in 2020. The name was burned away, but the admission date, April 30, 1893, proved this was Willowbrook's first inmate. Stranger still, the file contained 47 subsequent entries spanning decades, all for the same patient number, each with conflicting diagnoses and increasingly erratic handwriting. The final note, dated March 13, 1954, the night before the fire, read, "Subject remains resistant to aging process. Harvest no longer viable. Recommend termination." As names were restored, patterns emerged. Over 60% of victims were immigrants. Nearly 30% were people of color. At least 117 had been institutionalized for moral failings, like homosexuality or female hysteria. The project's lead researcher, Dr. Aaron Feldstein, noted, "This wasn't just malpractice, it was systemic eugenics." Voss was curating his idea of undesirables with surgical precision. The work took a psychological toll. Volunteers reported nightmares of being trapped in Willowbrook's wards. One genealogist quit after finding her own great-grandfather's name in the logs. Another developed a phobia of hospitals after discovering multiple victims shared her birth date. Then came the digital disturbances. In 2021, the project's database began glitching. Names rearranging themselves, photos of living relatives being replaced with asylum intake portraits. Security footage showed their office doors opening by themselves at night. The final straw came when a volunteer reviewing patient 6622 feet's file found her own driver's license photo staring back from the 1943 record. Today, the 847 Names Project operates in fragments, mirror sites, encrypted forums, paper copies hidden in private homes. They've identified 291 victims so far. Each name is read aloud at a memorial held every October outside the shopping center, though police always disperse the gathering. The most chilling moment comes when they reach the unnamed. A bell tolls 556 times, once for each soul still lost in Willowbrook's darkness. But sometimes attendees swear the bell rings itself one extra time, as if something underground is answering. Some objects carry memories, others carry hunger. Over the decades, fragments of Willowbrook have surfaced in the strangest places, each one radiating a quiet malice that unsettles anyone who encounters them. The The most infamous is the asylum mirror, salvaged from the ruins in 1954. Now housed in a private collector's vault, the floor-length glass reflects more than just the viewer. Those who stare too long report seeing figures moving behind them, gaunt faces peering over shoulders, mouths stretched in silent screams. The collector's log notes, after 3 minutes of exposure, subjects develop temporary anosmia, inability to smell, particularly to the scent of antiseptic and burning hair. Then there are the wristbands. Authentic blue patient tags occasionally appear at flea markets or eBay listings, always with the same eerie consistency. The ink never fades, the fabric never rots. Buyers invariably report nightmares of being strapped to a surgical table within a week of purchase. One eBay seller's entire inventory vanished overnight after listing a lot of 12 bands, leaving behind only a puddle of foul-smelling liquid and a single handwritten note. They want them back. The patient diaries pose their own danger. Scattered pages surface in library donations or antique shops filled with frantic scribbles in dozens of handwriting styles, as if multiple people wrote through the same hand. Common phrases repeat across unrelated finds. The singing in the walls is getting louder, and Dr. Voss says I'll be cured by morning. Linguists confirm the later entries aren't written in any known language, yet anyone who reads them aloud develops temporary aphasia, losing the ability to speak for exactly 8 hours and 47 minutes. But the most disturbing artifact is the bone scalpel, recovered from Tunnel Branch 7 in 1954. This surgical tool was supposedly melted down with other evidence. Yet identical specimens keep appearing in museum donations, medical school collections, even a high school biology lab in 2017. The blades are always cold to the touch, even in direct sunlight. Forensic analysis reveals trace amounts of human tissue in the crevices, fresh tissue, despite the tools being decades old. Perhaps most chilling are the admission forms that still materialize. Blank Willowbrook intake documents periodically appear in psychiatrist offices, social worker desks, and even DMV counters across New England. Each bears the same watermark, WIA, Willowbrook Inventory, active. At least 14 people have reportedly vanished after accidentally filling one out, their names later appearing in digitized asylum records they couldn't possibly have accessed. These objects share one unnerving trait. They always return to Blackvale. No matter where they're sold or discarded, they inevitably reappear near the old asylum grounds, often in the shopping center's lost and found bin, neatly stacked, as if waiting for pickup. The night security guards have a rule. If you see something that wasn't there at closing, don't touch it, just walk away. Because at Willowbrook, even the inanimate things remember their purpose, and some are still collecting. The first modern sighting occurred in 1978, when a Blackvale police officer responded to a burglar alarm at the newly built Willowbrook Shopping Center. Officer Daniel Greer's official report stated, one upon arrival at 2:34 a.m., observed multiple figures in old-fashioned hospital gowns moving through the appliance store, assumed to be escaped psychiatric patients from County Hospital. Upon pursuit, subjects vanished near the food court. Later confirmed no patients were missing from any local facilities. And this was no isolated incident. Night employees at the 24-hour diner across from the shopping center keep a log of encounters in the back kitchen, a battered notebook simply labeled The Watch. Some entries, June 1991, regular customer Booth 3 pointed out doctors and nurses walking through the parking lot. When I looked, only shadows. His coffee cup had frozen solid despite being freshly poured. December 1999, security camera footage shows the automatic doors opening by themselves for 47 minutes straight. Heat signatures show something moving in and out, but no visible people. March 2014, Jenny quit after seeing a little girl in a blue dress pressing hands against the window. Said the kid's mouth was moving like she was screaming, but no sound came out. The phenomena intensified when urban explorers began documenting the storm drain system connected to Willowbrook's tunnels. YouTube channel Nightwatch Paranormal captured the most chilling footage during their 2016 investigation. At 1:17 a.m., their thermal camera detected 7 human-shaped heat signatures moving single file through a sealed tunnel branch. The figures moved in perfect synchronization despite the passage being partially flooded. At 1:23 a.m., audio picked up labored breathing that wasn't present at the time of recording. The team's final live stream showed them fleeing after their equipment registered 847 distinct voices whispering "Help us" through their spirit box, a number that matched Willowbrook's missing. But the most credible account comes from retired architect Martin Vellis, who worked on the shopping center's 2003 renovation. We were installing new HVAC lines when we broke through into a previously sealed chamber. The air that rushed out, it smelled like antiseptic and something rotting. Our flashlights revealed handprints, dozens of them, covering the walls up to 7 feet high, fresh handprints in what looked like grease or ointment. Then we heard the scraping, not from the tunnel we'd opened, from inside the walls. The foreman called the job site cursed after that. 3 workers quit. One guy, Javier, swore he saw an old woman in a nurse's uniform watching us from the parking lot every night. The weirdest part? Our blueprints showed no chamber should have existed where we broke through. Security guard Marcus Town, who patrolled the shopping center from 2010 to 2018, kept a private journal. So February 14, 2015. The motion sensors in Sears keep triggering between 2:0 to 2:30 a.m. No one there. Tonight I saw footprints forming in the dust, bare feet with toes splayed like someone being dragged. They led straight to a wall and stopped. March 3, 2015. Found the east emergency exit wide open at 2:17 a.m. Security tape shows the door unlocking itself. Played back the feed and counted 47 shadowy figures passing through before it closed again. Management told me to erase the footage. October 31st, 2017, the voices started tonight, not over the radio, behind me, whispering numbers. 114, 291, 377. Corresponds to patient records I've never seen. Perhaps most disturbing are the accounts from Blackvale's homeless population, who sometimes shelter in the shopping center's loading docks after hours. They don't bother you if you don't look at them, said a man who identified himself only as Jim Bob. Just keep your eyes down when you hear the squeaky wheels. The doctors still make their rounds after midnight. Sometimes they take someone, not often, just when the numbers don't add up no more. In 2021, paranormal investigator Lisa Tran set up overnight infrared cameras throughout the shopping center. What they captured defied explanation. 11:47 p.m., a gurney rolls through the food court with no visible force moving at 1:23 a.m. Dozens of shadowy figures emerge from walls near the old Sears location. 2:17 a.m., a spectral nurse checks a clipboard as figures line up obediently before vanishing. Tran's final report noted. The activity follows precise hospital routines, medication times, shift changes, even what appears to be a nightly head count. This isn't residual haunting. This is an institution still operating on some terrible frequency we can't fully perceive. The most recent sighting occurred last month. A TikTok video filmed by a teenager shows the shopping center's darkened interior after closing. As the camera pans across the food court, something moves in the reflection of a shuttered kiosk. A line of gaunt figures in hospital gowns being led by a tall man in a doctor's coat. When the light hits the glass just right, the coat's name tag becomes visible. Voss. The video went viral before being removed for violating community guidelines. Local officials dismissed it as a prank. But those who've studied Willowbrook know the truth. The asylum never closed. It simply moved shifts. The fire silenced Willowbrook's horrors in 1954. But the whispers never stopped. After decades of investigations, disappearances, and inexplicable phenomena, the asylum's full truth remains buried beneath layers of concrete and conspiracy. The official records were destroyed. The witnesses met untimely ends. Yet certain questions refuse to stay buried, questions that claw at the edges of our understanding. What truly happened to the 847 souls who entered Willowbrook but never left? The patient logs show systematic disappearances every 4 to 6 weeks like clockwork, always following the same pattern: a blue wristband, a midnight transfer, a red 10 in the records. But the tunnels revealed only partial answers. Some bodies were burned, others dissolved in lime, a select few dissected with surgical precision. Were they all victims of Dr. Voss's eugenics program, or was something more ritualistic at work? The harvest logs reference shipments to unnamed facilities, while Reverend Whitlock's journals speak of purification. Did Willowbrook serve as some unholy supplier for darker institutions? Why did the disappearances follow such precise intervals? Nurse Pritchard's confession noted the harvest days occurred every third Thursday, often coinciding with lunar cycles. The recovered surgical schedules show increased activity during solstices and equinoxes. Was this mere bureaucratic efficiency or something more esoteric? The asylum's original blueprints, hidden in a private collector's vault, reveal an anomalous chamber directly beneath the chapel, its walls inscribed with symbols matching no known medical or religious tradition. What ceremonies took place in that windowless room where even orderlies refused to go? Who or what still walks Willowbrook's halls? Modern sightings describe more than just residual hauntings. The figures interact with their environment, opening doors, moving objects, even appearing to take inventory of living visitors. Security footage from the shopping center shows shadowy forms following exact hospital routines decades after the asylum's destruction. Most chilling are the reports of the night doctors, tall figures in stained lab coats who still attempt to examine trespassers. Are these mere ghostly echoes or proof that Voss's work continues in some terrible unseen dimension? What caused the 1954 fire that conveniently destroyed all evidence? The official report blamed faulty wiring, yet Willowbrook hadn't had electricity in the administration wing for years. The multiple ignition points and presence of accelerants suggest arson. But by whom? Voss was found dead at his desk, yet his safe had been emptied before the flames reached it. The demolition crew's discovery of 847 patient files in a fireproof box just before the tunnels were sealed raises darker possibilities. Was the fire meant to conceal evidence or to prevent something from getting out? Most disturbing of all, why do new patient records keep surfacing? As recently as 2022, a construction worker renovating a Blackvale home found admission forms hidden in the walls, with dates from the 1990s. The names matched missing persons cases. How does an asylum that closed in 1954 continue processing patients decades later? And why do those who study Willowbrook too deeply often find their own names appearing in its ledgers? The shopping center stands as a flimsy mask over these unanswered questions. Its foundation cracks annually in the same spiderweb pattern. The storm drains still cough up bone fragments every spring. The night guards hear gurney wheels squeaking beneath their feet. We may never know the full truth of what happened at Willowbrook, but one thing is certain, the asylum isn't done with us yet. Because in Blackvale, the past isn't dead. It's just waiting for the next shift change. They say Willowbrook never lets go of its guests. Since the shopping center's construction, over 27 documented trespassers have vanished after entering the property after hours. Those who return are never the same. Take the case of Kyle Richter, a college student who broke in on a dare in 2017. Surveillance footage shows him entering through a maintenance door at 11:53 p.m. and exiting at 3:17 a.m., barefoot, his hair turned white. He was found muttering a single phrase on repeat. They're still counting. Richter now resides in a psychiatric ward, where nurses report he compulsively scratches tally marks into his skin. Then there are the shopping center employees who've accidentally stayed too late. Janitor Miguel Fernandez swears he once saw the food court transform back into an asylum ward for exactly 47 seconds at 2:17 a.m. Linoleum floors reverting to cracked tile, modern storefronts becoming barred windows. When he tried to photograph it, his phone displayed only static. The next morning, his time card showed he'd clocked out at midnight, despite clear memories of working until dawn. The most chilling accounts come from urban explorers who've breached the sealed tunnel entrances. In 2019, a team from Paranormal Investigations Unlimited descended through a storm drain, armed with thermal cameras and EMF detectors. Their livestream captured a sudden temperature drop from 68°F to 17°F in Tunnel Branch, 2 handprints appearing in condensation on the walls. Some, far too small to be adult, a clear voice whispering, subject 622 present for treatment through dead radio static. The team emerged, missing one member. Search dogs later traced his scent to a solid concrete wall in Branch 4. His GoPro was recovered a year later in the shopping center's Lost and Found. The final footage shows him being pulled into darkness by skeletal hands wearing surgical gloves. Even daylight offers no protection. In 2021, a plumber working on the shopping center's pipes reported finding a fully intact patient room behind a false wall. The bed made, a meal tray with rotting food, and a pair of leather restraints that were still warm to the touch. When he returned with management, the wall was solid brick. Security footage from that day shows him screaming at something only he could see before quitting on the spot. The rules among Blackvale's night workers are simple. Never answer if you hear your name called from an empty corridor. Never investigate the sound of squeaking wheels. If the lights flicker at exactly 2:17 a.m., leave immediately. Don't look back, because Willowbrook doesn't just show you its horrors, it enrolls you in them. Just ask the night shift janitor who vanished last winter. His replacement found his time card still punched in, his locker filled with 1940s-era nurses' scrubs, and on the security monitor, a figure in a white coat leading a line of patients down aisle 9. One of them was wearing modern work boots. Willowbrook Asylum may have burned in 1954, but its darkness never died. It simply learned new ways to survive. The shopping center stands as a grotesque monument to our collective amnesia, a place where families eat pizza over unmarked graves, where children play where patients once screamed into bloody pillows. But the foundation cracks for a reason. The lights flicker at 2:17 a.m. for a reason. The storm drains still cough up bone fragments because some truths refuse to stay buried. Dr. Voss's vision outlived him. His purification program didn't end with the fire. It just evolved. The missing patient files that keep appearing with modern dates. The black vans spotted loading something into the storm drains every March. The way local officials still shut down any serious investigation. Willowbrook was never just a building. It was an idea. And ideas don't burn. The 847 names we've recovered are only the beginning. For every victim identified, a dozen more whisper from the darkness. Their stories aren't confined to history books. They're written in the nightmares of trespassers, in the phantom pains of those who the felt unseen hands grab them in the tunnels, in the way every digital recording of the site eventually corrupts into static and screams. Perhaps the most terrifying lesson of Willowbrook is this. Monsters don't need to hide when we're willing to pave over their crimes. The asylum's true legacy isn't the ghosts. It's our willingness to shop where souls were slaughtered, to dismiss the persistent rumors, to accept official explanations we know are lies. But the walls remember what we choose to forget. The night guards still hear the distant squeak of gurney wheels. The janitors still find patient wristbands in places they shouldn't be. And somewhere beneath the food court's cheerful music, if you listen closely, you can still hear it. The sound of 847 voices counting down the days until the concrete cracks for good. Because institutions like Willowbrook don't really close. They just wait for us to stop watching. So the next time you visit the Willowbrook Shopping Center, pay attention to the details, the way the security cameras always seem to glitch near the east corridor. The cold spot by the fountain that no HVAC technician can explain. And if you happen to visit at closing time, listen very carefully as the gates lock behind you. You might just hear the faintest echo of a question. One Willowbrook has been asking for over a century. Who's next? This isn't how the story ends. It's how the next chapter begins. The call came in at 2:17 a.m. on March 14, 2024, the 70th anniversary of the fire. Blackvale PD dispatched Officer Lisa Nguyen to the Willowbrook Shopping Center for a disturbance. Body cam footage shows her walking through the empty food court when the temperature suddenly drops. Her breath comes in visible clouds as a metallic squeaking echoes from aisle 9. The exact spot where Tunnel Branch 2 surfaces beneath the foundation. The footage shows her flashlight catching movement near the shuttered pretzel stand. A figure in a tattered white coat stands with its back to her, examining a clipboard. As she calls out, 7 more shapes materialize behind it. Emaciated figures in stained hospital gowns, their wrists bearing faded blue bands. The thermal imaging goes haywire, alternating between freezing cold and impossible heat signatures. Nguyen's final transmission lasts 8 minutes and 47 seconds of distorted audio. The clearest moment comes at the 4:23 mark, when a voice that isn't hers whispers, subject 848 processed. When backup arrived, they found Nguyen's body cam and flashlight in the center of a massive bloodstain shaped like an outstretched hand. Her service pistol lay nearby, all 6 bullets fired, though no shell casings were recovered. The security footage from that night shows only static from 2:17 to 2:47 a.m., but the parking lot surveillance cameras caught something else entirely. At exactly 3:01 a.m., the shopping center's automatic doors slide open. A single figure strides out wearing a familiar white coat, now pristine and crisp. It pauses beneath a streetlight, turning briefly to face the camera. The face is unmistakably Dr. Voss's, young, smiling. He checks his watch, adjusts his cufflinks, and walks calmly into the night. Behind him, the shopping center's lights flicker once before going dark. The next morning, workers arrive to find every store's inventory perfectly stocked, except for one item missing from each location. A single set of hospital scrubs, size medium, freshly pressed,